Well, that's a great question. Reflecting just for a minute on Europe and my career. Fortunately, I've been in privacy long enough that I had the good fortune of meeting and actually working with some of the original pioneers like Alan Weston. And what's forgotten, really, that's worth noting about Europe and GDPR is that the United States and Europe in the late 60s, early 70s both started in the same place with privacy and continue to agree. We could have a whole episode on this, but in 1974, we had the passage of the Privacy Act, which is still in force and has a lot of meaning to those in federal government. It really does afford a lot of privacy protections to the public. But that act, as it was about to be passed, at the time, it was public and private. So it was going to be all of privacy, commercial. Well, commercial managed to exempt itself out. And so we do have the Privacy Act of 1974. We continued on the road with the Europeans toward the OECD privacy guidelines in 1980, which still serve us well. But it was at that point in the implementation of the OECD privacy guidelines, and this is pre-European Commission, but 15 years later, that turned into 1995 Data Directive. That was really the point of departure. But we started in the same place. We share a lot of common values. The European Commission has evolved a lot since the 95 Data Directive in the direction of GDPR, and now, of course, in the direction of the EU AI Act and Digital Services Act and Digital Marketing Act and lots of other regulation. But in the US, we've taken, for better or worse, a sectoral approach to privacy. And we've said, sensitive areas of information need to be protected. So that's medical, financial, children. I look back on my career at the FTC. In hindsight, it's always 2020. You do the best you can with the information that you have. And when I started at the FTC, this is pre 97, pre Google, pre Facebook. If we could have known then what we know now, there were lots of really strong bipartisan efforts to pass a comprehensive privacy bill in the early 2000s. But the decision was made that it was too early, that we need to give industry a chance to self-regulate. And that hasn't worked. And the FTC has the FTC Act, and that's unfair deceptive acts and practices in commerce. And so the FTC has to enforce against that in terms of privacy, against that broad statute. So if we could have a mulligan, a do-over to turn the clock back 20 years, knowing what we know now, there would have been a privacy bill. So a lot of the discussion, a lot of what we spent the last 20 years working on with the Europeans in terms of cross-border data transfers and safe harbor, privacy shields, challenges to SHRMS 1, SHRMS 2. We have spent so much time just bending over backwards to be adequate, which is a European term. And we'll see. There's going to be a SHRMS 3. We'll see if all the work and I think the U.S. government really is, and the European Commission too, but the U.S. government really is to be commended for the whole of government approach to the fix for SHRMS 2. And the fact that SHRMS is not really about privacy, it's more about national security. We've fixed all that. The involvement of the intel community post-Snowden and the cleanup to that mess has really led us to where we are now. So I think what we have is a very comprehensive tool. We'll see if it works, and I hope it withstands the European Court of Justice. But it's quite remarkable for those who are not in government to appreciate the amount of time and energy that's gone into privacy and all of these adequacy decisions really for the last 20 years, but especially the last 5 years since we brought national security into it and sort of the fix post SHRMS and post Snowden.